Honestly, you guys aren't gonna believe the story behind this picture. And I call out this picture specifically because this is one of the more popular pictures that the JSX marketing team uses for marketing. This was a really big photo shoot. I was the FO who got the plane there, and I was with the captain, obviously. And we were the team that positioned the plane at that airport to do this photo shoot. But we didn't know that it was a photo shoot, and it ended up being a really interesting story. Me and one of my favorite captains at JSX, we'd been sitting on reserve basically all day, and the company was like, yeah, there might be a repo for you guys later, there might not be, but we're kind of just waiting to see what happens, so just stand by and be ready. Well, later in the night, so it had to be like 9 or 10 o'clock at night, they finally call us and they say, hey guys, we need you to take this plane down to this airport in California. We didn't know why we were taking it down. They never said you're gonna go take a photo shoot. They never said what the plane's going down there for. So we assumed that maybe it was like a reposition for a charter, because this was not an airport that we normally fly to. We're coming into land. By the time that we're arriving at this airport, it's probably like somewhere between 12 and 1 o'clock in the morning. So it's dark outside. The airport is dark. I want to say it was an uncontrolled airfield. But either way, there was nothing happening at the airport. The captain is doing beautiful, stable approach as they always do. And we come in, we land, we touch down. All of a sudden, the plane pulls super hard to the left. They corrected and got it back on course. And we didn't really think too much of it. Maybe it was a really weird gust of wind, or maybe, we were a little angled in and we didn't notice because, it was dark, it was late at night. So we taxi off the runway. The airplane is taxiing perfectly fine. There is nothing telling us or indicating to us that there is some kind of issue happening with the airplane. We taxi off the runway, we get to our parking, we shut down the airplane. At the end of the day or at the end of a flight, you do a post-flight walk around. I have a flashlight on me, I'm looking around, but the ramp is completely dark. It has to be one of the darkest ramps I've ever been on in my life. So outside of the flashlight, you would miss a detail, because it's so dark out there. From the inspection that I did, it appeared that everything was a-okay with the airplane. So we head off to the hotel. The next morning, my boss calls me and he says, hey man, did anything weird happen on the flight yesterday? And I'm like, no, not that I could think of. He's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, man, I can't think of anything weird that happened on last night's flight. He's like, okay, well, there's like a huge hole in the tire. I said, what? He was like, yeah, man, there's a big hole in the tire. And I said, oh. He's like, did you do your post-flight walk around? I'm like, yeah, I definitely did a post-flight walk around. He's like, okay, because this is like, it's a pretty hard to miss hole. I'm like, oh boy. So we get off the phone, I call up the captain. I'm like, hey, we should probably get down to the airplane because apparently there's like a big hole in the tire, and apparently there's some really important stuff happening down the airport right now, and everybody's a little mad about it. We get into an Uber, we go down to the airport, we go to the airplane. Guys, I kid you not, there was obviously a big hole in the tire. There was actually a trail, like when you rub, if you were to take a tire and just hold it and rub it across concrete, it would leave like a rubber trail. There was that kind of trail basically from the moment we touched down all the way to where we taxied in park. So it's just a black tire trail following the airplane in the exact form that we taxied. It was the funniest thing I ever seen. To add to that, the reason why that this was a big deal was because that day was the day that they were doing a photo shoot to take the pictures that we saw on the thumbnail. Couldn't have been better timing. So everybody was livid. The marketing team was pissed. They were like, how did you guys do this? How did you not catch it? Like, what's wrong with you guys? Are you guys even professional pilots? Like, what's going on? How could you not see this? Like, we have a photo shoot. The CEO is going to be pissed. We spent so much money on this. And when I say like everybody was pissed, it was really specifically like this one lady in marketing. Like, I think everybody else was chill, but she was just like really, 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 really mad. I think that the photographers who were there were pretty understanding that like everything that would be photoshopped out without an issue, but she was having a time.
Boy, we had a time last night. Boy, we had a time last night.
And so we're like, yeah, like tires blow out, things happen, and the ramp was extremely dark. It was so dark, I didn't even see a black trail when I did my walk around that night. That's how dark it was. You wouldn't see anything like that. At most airports, especially at your major airports, the ramp is really well lit. So if you do have an abnormality like that, you would 100% catch it. But this wasn't a big airport, and the ramp was not lit like that because there's no reason for it to be. This is quickly becoming a big deal. We call the mechanics, and this had been a plane that JSX had recently acquired. And because our planes at JSX were all used, when we get them, even after we go through the refurbishing process and get them through heavy maintenance checks and go through everything, there are usually little gremlins that we have to find and work out just because it's an older plane. It's the same thing where if you bought a used car, even if you go and get everything checked out and they say it's good to go, odds are you will find like small things here and there that are an issue on that particular car. Well, on this specific plane, the mechanics had been chasing a braking issue, specifically with the anti-skid system. Now, a little bit of system knowledge, in the ERJ-135, 145, it should pretty much be impossible for you to lock up a tire and make it skid, because when a tire skids, you lose traction, but more importantly, you can easily pop a tire. That being said, in the ERJ-145 and the 135, if you pop one of your main gear tires, you really don't notice. I've had it happen before. You get a slight jolt and then the plane goes just fine. You really would not notice unless you explicitly knew that you were likely gonna have a tire pop. Then you'd be like, oh, the tire probably just popped. But otherwise, you would really just shrug it off because it's not that big of a deal inside that plane. Inside of smaller planes like a Cessna, a pop tire will prevent you from going anywhere. Ask me how I know. So yeah, they're like, yeah, we've been chasing this anti-skid system issue, and essentially the system would fail and it would just lock a tire, and that's exactly what happened to us. So what happened was the anti-skid system failed. When we touched down, we applied normal braking, and instead of the system pulsing the brakes on that tire to prevent it from locking up and skidding, it just held that tire and it locked up, it skid, and then boom, it popped. This doesn't take long because we're moving so fast and there's so much weight on the tire. Like within a second or two of it skidding, if that, you're gonna blow a tire. And so the tire blew. That's when we had that really hard jolt to the left. The captain corrected, and no big deal. And we were back on center line and we taxied off. So this pop tire was in no way our fault. It had nothing to do with us. It was nothing we could have prevented. There were no kind of warnings or messages that the airplane was giving us to tell us that, hey, our braking system was having an issue. This was just a gremlin that occasionally had popped up. And so it was kind of like this issue that they were working through. And it just so happened to be that on this particular day, that particular gremlin showed up and we popped the tire. It makes me laugh because we had no idea this was a really big photo shoot. And so now every single time I look at this picture, I always just laugh a little bit because that was one of the people who helped get that plane there. And the story behind it is actually quite ridiculous.